Hello, everyone. I hope you're well. Isaac Aqua here from the Ghana News and Journal, and today we're going to have a really interesting conversation looking at the end of year report that came out recently by the Ghana News and Journal. And I am here with four fantastic speakers giving us insights from their perspective of the work they do in the ecosystem. Let me invite them onto the main stage. So with me, I have Isidore, the founder and CEO of Riviera, a health tech company, serial entrepreneur. The big man himself, I'm honored, founder of Moonshot and also works for Paystack, country manager there. Madame Davina, we just met in Kenya recently, who is a lawyer and works for a law tech company. And we have one more joining us just very shortly, but I'll allow them to introduce themselves. We're going to have a very cool, fun conversation, give you some insights into the ecosystem, but more importantly, pick their brains and see how and what they think of what's happening. We just have one more person whose device is connecting. So we'll just give them a moment. But yes, for all those joining, thank you for joining. This is Ghana Innovation Journal. We're here to inform, inspire, and investigate what happens in the landscape in Ghana. We've been doing this for the last couple of years with weekly news, with reports, and with media coverage of the ecosystem as well. I'm sure it's just one technical challenge that's going on. And please, for everyone online, please drop comments. We can see your comments, so make sure we can see how to involve you in the conversation, which will be very dynamic as well. So in the chats, whether you're joining us on YouTube or LinkedIn, just drop a comment and we'll get back to you on that. Just as the last person is joining, perfect. Oh, she was just here. So, excellent. We have our full house. Thank you. And now, as mentioned, Doreen from GIJ. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have busy schedules. Well, we'll start with a quick introduction. So this is looking at the Ghana Innovation Journal end of year 2024 report. We looked at the whole year, seeing what's happening in the space, and now looking to have your insights and your thoughts on that. But to do that, maybe just a quick fire round discussion and just get some insights. We'll just go around in a circle with ladies first. What does the ecosystem mean to you in one word? We'll go with you, Doreen, first.
I was trying to be sneaky and turn off my microphone, but you caught me right before that. Okay, I think I will go with the word growing. I'll say it's growing. I mean, we've made a lot of progress the past few years. It's been quite impressive, especially reading through the reports that your institution put together. But of course, you'd also agree with me that we have a lot more progress that we are still making. So I will go with the word growing.
Okay. Davina?
I think I'm next. I would go with the word thriving.
Okay.
Um, it's essentially the future, and we see how the progress is going fast paced. So I believe thriving is the best word for me.
Awesome. Thank you. We go with Isidore.
Yeah, I would say maturing. Yeah, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to the audience, wherever they are listening or watching from. I'll say maturing. I think things have been getting better um, year after year, and so that's how I describe it.
Okay. And Kojo, what is your word?
Yeah, my word will be nascent. I still think we're at the foundational stage. I think there's been so much progress, but I think that we're still at the place where a lot will be built in the coming years. So excited for that.
Okay. Thank you. So now, do the circle again. Please introduce yourself. Let us know who you are and what was your personal highlight of 2024. Start again with you.
Oh wow, do I need to change my position? Okay, so my name is Doreen and I work with GIZ Ghana. I've actually been in the sector for about 8 to 10 years now. I started off working in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, but for the past 2 to 3 years now, I've been doing things more around the digital policy sector. And so I'm looking at ways that policy affects the work of things that we we do here in the ecosystem. What's the question again, Isaac?
What was your personal highlight of the year?
My personal highlight of the year. I think for me, I very much thrive on collaboration and also getting people connected, and so I will go in with events that have happened in the sector that have brought startups and relevant stakeholders together. And for the past year, it's been two main events. Let me be biased and talk about the GDIW first. So the GDIW, that stands for the Ghana Digital and Innovation Week, has been organized for the past 4 years. The focus is on bringing together various stakeholders across the digital ecosystem together. I do see some familiar faces on the call today. So Isidore has been very much a big part of this event in the past last years. And the second event that I'm going to talk about is the 3I Summit. You guys came in and you made so much noise first year, and it was quite a big event in the ecosystem. But for me, the highlight for me for that event is the fact that the government seems to be also backing the innovation and digital ecosystem. It's also nice to also see how this support is getting towards the fintech sector. And so, yeah, those will be my two key highlights for this year. And again, let me say hi to everyone who just joined in for today's session.
No, thank you. So I'll be a gentleman for this round, and then I'll mix it up. Yeah, Davina, what is your what's your introduction, and then also what's your personal highlight of 2024?
Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Devdina Datson. I'm a lawyer in Ghana. I currently work with Blaine Associates as an associate. And on the side, I'm the legal tech lead for Legal Find. We are a law tech startup that's hoping to integrate digitized legal documents in Ghana. My highlight for last year, 2024, would be speaking at the UN Global Compact Leaders Summit in New York. I had the opportunity to present Legal Find to world leaders in New York, and it was an exciting experience. So I would say that was my highlight for last year.
Amazing, amazing. I did promise we have some heavyweights on the call. Thank you very much. Isidore, we're jumping to you next. Please introduce yourself and give us your 2024 highlight.
I work with Revia, which is a network of company-owned and partner healthcare clinics across Ghana. We're in Greater Accra, in the Eastern region and the Central region. We're using tech to offer primary healthcare services. In terms of highlight, I think that we are learning that business models in Africa, especially startup business models, have to be market relevant. Many of the people I spoke to last year, this was one of the key highlights of our conversations. That look, the business models in Africa have to be market relevant. Investors are also beginning to talk the same way, which I think is really good. That's one thing we haven't really been very good at. The second thing is that I think that we've seen so many efforts trying to bring the ecosystem together. We haven't, particularly in Ghana, it's not something that we do very well. The ecosystem is really isolated. You have all sort of players trying to do things by themselves in a small space, and folks like Doreen and other folks and yourself are trying to bring everyone together to collaborate. I think that's another highlight. We've seen so many events last year, and I'm sure this year we'll be seeing so many of them. So these are the two things I would say. So we're seeing an acceleration of effort to bring the ecosystem together, closer together, which is really important. But we're also seeing business models adjustments or shifts to make sense for Africa.
Thank you. Bringing in Kojo, please, your introduction and your highlight 2024. Then we get going.
Hi everyone, my name is Kojo Osajiman. I with Moonshot Venture Partners, which we call MVP Africa. So MVP was started in 2021, and what we do is we invest at the super early stage in companies that are building for Africa. So we really want to come in when you have an idea in your head, and the risk is pretty much as high as being in a casino. We've been doing this for the last 4 years. On the other side, I work with a payments company called Paystack, and Paystack helps businesses to accept or make payments across Africa. My 2024 highlights, that's the question, is it?
That's a question.
Yeah. I think on the personal side for MVP, our 2024 highlights, and there's only so much I can say, but 2024, we had an exit, right? An exit to a really big company, a global name, and that was sort of a good moment for us. There's so much we can say publicly due to confidentiality, but I think that's the biggest thing we've seen, because where we invest is super high risk. We see a lot of failures, but at the same time, these little successes is what keeps us going.
Congratulations. I can't wait for when the news is allowed to be made public. I would love to cover that story, but I do understand. But yeah, no, congratulations for that. I was going to go right back to Doreen, but she doesn't like going first. So I will go to Davina. Looking at policy and regulation. And let me get to the main stage. As a lawyer, we all know startups sometimes don't like to go exactly according to the law. And what do you think are some of the legal bottlenecks that slow down startup innovation in Ghana? Jumping into heavy questions.
Okay, so I think the main bottleneck would be the regulation of a lot of the startup sectors. When I say startup sectors, I mean what the sector of the startup would be, particularly fintech. So fintech, AI in Ghana, they're not regulated as we would like them to be. So the startups usually have to find ways around it. And when you speak to people starting their businesses, starting innovative ideas, bringing things together, a lot of them will tell you, oh, I don't need a lawyer. I'm a junior. I'm now starting. I don't need to regularize a lot of things. When they go, they realize they're facing stumbling blocks, and then they come back to now try to regularize things. So most people do not realize that when you're starting a company, you have to register. So we're in Ghana, so I'm limiting it to Ghana. So you have to register the company with the Office of the Registrar of Companies. You'd have to get various licenses depending on the sector you're in. So if you're dealing with fintech, you'd have to deal with Bank of Ghana. If you're dealing with gaming matters, you go to Gaming Commission and all those things. And the main stumbling block or the main bottleneck would be the regulation of these sectors. The startup world is evolving, and unfortunately, Ghana's legal system is not catching up. We've seen some regulators come out to say, "Oh, we're looking to regulate. We're looking to bring out legislation in affecting certain sectors," but these have not been done yet. So I think that's the main part that's been a bottleneck. Yes.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Doreen, you're coming in next. Your Madame Policy, you left us in the acceleration world and have gone to focus on policy. So please fill us in a little bit. What's happening in the policy space?
So Davida has spoken a bit about the regulation sector. Let me add on to certain policies that we have seen emerge last year that will really benefit startups. And I think, Isaac, you are pretty much aware of this very essential policy document, which is the Ghana Digital Economy Policy. This was launched by the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization last year, now called the Ministry of Communication, Digital Technology and Innovation. And for me, it's two main policy pillars that I feel would impact the Ghanaian startup and innovation sector. Let me start by saying that the policy document highlights 5 key policy pillars. But for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to stick to 2 of those policy pillars. The first one is on digital infrastructure. We see the work of startups falling on several foundational elements, and one of them is on infrastructural development. And especially so when you talk about the tech startup sector or the innovation sector, access to digital infrastructure is very important. We're talking about things around connectivity. We're talking about things around access to internet data and even the cost of this data, And these are some of the areas that this policy document seeks to make recommendations in. So the key recommendations in these areas is to make access to internet connectivity very, make it accessible. And so someone who probably is in a remote area can now access your service. And startups also don't have to have challenges accessing people within other areas apart from Ghana as well. And then also the topic about data access and affordability. I think one of the things that has become a buzzword in Ghana now. I heard last week during Independence Day there was some bundles that the minister was able to come into consensus with the various telcos to bring access to Ghanaians. And so these are some of the areas that the ministry is looking at making recommendations in. Now, let me also touch on the second pillar, which is on digital entrepreneurship. It is a very big sector or aspects that the ministry has touched on. And over here, they're looking at things around making access to innovation hubs very accessible. And so I think in Ghana, we currently have over 100 innovation hubs scattered across the country. But I think it won't surprise anyone here on the call to know that we have a lot of these hubs in remote areas that don't have access to certain general amenities. And so under the innovation hub pillar of this particular policy, the government is looking at making access to breaking that rural-urban divide between the innovation hubs. They're also looking at things around access to capital. And so the recommendation there is to incentivize investment firms that are looking to fund startups. They're also looking at creating or giving access to funding to some venture capital trust funds that will make it easier for startups to access funding. And then we also have things around scaling local tech ecosystems. And over here, the focus is on giving access to startups, giving startups access to access certain government-related services. So this is a topic that has been talked about for quite some time now. A lot of times, startups are not able to bid for certain government contracts. And so this policy recommendation is to make sure that we bridge that gap between what the bigger firms are able to access when it comes to government procurement services, and also what the local startups can also access. And then I'll finally talk about the innovation culture. And over here, what the government is looking at doing is to create a platform that can help startups to showcase their products and services. So when we pick that digital economy policy, it's really dense with so much policy recommendations that once the government is able to implement these policies, they can greatly benefit the startup ecosystem. And one of the things that I'm also very excited about is the fact that the current administration has actually been doing so much in the sector to be able to improve digital entrepreneurship. So let me pause here. I have a few more, but I'll touch on them probably as we move on.
Okay, thank you very much. As I did mention, you are the policy guru, and we thank you for the work you're doing. We covered in the Ghana Innovation Journal report. Let me just share the slide. We looked at lots of different policies that were put forward last year. Mesty looked at the innovation vouchers, security exchange, looked at crowdfunding policy that's allowed crowdfunding to happen, spearheaded by Grow For Me. Bank of Ghana had regulations and guidelines on cryptocurrencies and digital assets. I think you touched on the digital economy policy by the Ministry of Communication, Digitalization. GIJ had their classification to empower businesses and policymakers. Cybersecurity Authority, National Insurance Commission extended companies into their sandbox. So I think all are familiar with the Bank of Ghana sandbox, but now we have an insurance sandbox. And Bank of Ghana released open banking draft directives to advance digital finance. So these are some of the policies that we looked at. Everybody, would like to hear what for you do you believe is the most impactful policy? What do you think is going to have the biggest impact for startups in 2025? Yeah, please, this time I'll just let you just jump in.
So I just want to speak to, Doreen made a point earlier about data affordability and access. I think she mentioned that it's become a buzzword. I think that actually it goes beyond the buzz. I don't know what the latest stats are, but what I know, I have qualitative data because in my line of work, I happen to travel to some other parts of the country occasionally beyond Accra, and there are places within 10 miles of Accra that don't have proper, telephone reception, not just data, but telephone. So someone has a phone, they want to make a call, because then they don't have very good telephone reception. So I'm not sure how you're going to create an inclusive digital economy when people struggle to have access to data, right? I have been to these places where some of these people don't have access to smartphones, and yet all the startup innovations we're seeing are actually premised on an app for this, an app for that, an app for this. And yet these people don't have access to smartphones. And even if they do, they don't use these smartphones for other things except to send messages, not on WhatsApp, but via SMS, occasional on WhatsApp, or just to make calls, and then to withdraw mobile money when their children send them remittances. And so it is important for us to contextualize our economy within this, in having all this in mind. Otherwise, we would be building a digital economy in isolation. So, and one of the things I tell people all the time is that, look, every health tech innovation is about, it's telemedicine. Every health tech innovation is telemedicine, building a website to connect doctors to patients, and that is how we are going to solve the healthcare accessibility and affordability issue. And when I go to these places, these people don't have smartphones. Even if they do have smartphones, they have phones, they are not able to make calls. So how are you able to connect these patients or these people in this community to doctors remotely? So I think it's important for us to focus heavily on digital infrastructure, to really expand digital infrastructure. So this includes data. This includes so internet. It includes cell phone reception. We also need to invest a lot in education, right? So there are many startups that are creating software to solve different business, for different business cases, right? But I've come into contact with people who are business owners, right, who would need the software, but they have not oriented their mind to actually buy the software. They have the money, but someone doesn't see an SME owner doesn't see the need for an ERP, for example, for your business, and you're building that. And so I really think that we need to invest in expanding the digital infrastructure. We need to invest significantly on education, because no amount of innovation is going to really save us from these issues. So these are the initial thoughts that I want to add. Away from, I know I didn't talk about some of these policy initiatives that we talked about earlier, or Isaac, you highlighted. But my position is that some of these policy initiatives will not work if you don't have the right digital infrastructure. Some of these policy initiatives will not work if you don't have the market to buy the solutions that the startups are building.
I hear you. Yeah, thank you for your point. I don't know if the video. Yeah.
Yeah. Isaac, I wanted to also add on to the points I made earlier. So one of the things that I know you just showcased some of the policies that we have that are supporting the startup ecosystem, but one of the things that the digital economy policy is seeking to do is to identify the various aspects of public sector that are supporting the digital entrepreneurship or the digital economy, and finding a strategy to bring them together, consolidate their efforts together. So the Ministry of Communication, Digital Technology and Innovation is going to be that mother body, bringing all of these institutions together to see ways that we can connect and align our efforts towards our shared goals. So it's one of the things that this policy document also highlights in there. The importance of aligning the mandates and vision of all of these policies together.
No, thank you for that. Do you have a favorite policy from 2024? One that you feel will make the most impact?
There is a question to me.
Yeah, I'll ask everybody. I mean, Isidore has a different stance, but for you, and then Kojo and Davin? What policy do you think will make the most impact? What do you think?
Maybe
Yeah.
I can go. Yeah, so for me, I mean, as a fintech person, the biggest one for me will be the virtual assets or the cryptocurrency digital assets guidelines. I know they released draft, and then we're expecting the guidelines to come out sometime this year. But the reason why this is the most transformational for me is in context of where we are in the world and where fintech is heading to. There's a lot of talk about people say fintech is saturated, or even more so, payments is saturated. Everybody's doing payments, which is true to some extent, but there's just so much to be done, especially in the area of blockchain, stable coins, cross-border payments, and leveraging these things to pretty much take us to the next level, because it is being done elsewhere, and it just makes more sense. It's faster, it's cheaper to leverage these technologies to do all of these things that are being done elsewhere. So for me, it's quite exciting to hear that the central bank is already trying to support to release guidelines so that we can leverage these things, and also I think it's going to open up a new set of founders to build in these, because historically people are building in this space and they're sort of like cast into shadows because anything crypto is seen as, you know, quote unquote shady or unregulated. So this sort of legitimizes
Yeah.
all of that group. And as the whole world is shifting there, we can also ride that wave and create, sort of build for that future. Yeah.
No, thank you. Do you want to come in? Was there any policy that caught your eye? Davinda?
I think I side with him on the fact that there need to be the guidelines on the regulation of crypto. Um, One policy that drew my attention was the fact that the other countries, the European countries, are dealing with the travel rule in terms of crypto. And for Ghana, we've not exactly touched on that, but well, for them, if to enhance transparency, to combat all the money laundering, financing terrorism issues, these countries are they're regulating the sector to ensure that if you're sending crypto above a certain amount or above a certain threshold, you'd complete KYC forms, you'd go through certain processes before that transfer can be made. And I see that Nigeria is catching on. That's the exciting part. But Ghana is yet to speak on that. So we're excited to see what guidelines Bank of Ghana comes out with in the end. We've seen basic drafts, but we want the final product. So that's a policy we are looking forward to, essentially. Yes.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm a big advocate for the Web3 space. I've spoken at the Ethereum Foundation in Addis, the first event, so I'm really looking forward to the Web3. But I think in the short term, the crowdfunding policy might be a game changer. We all talk about startups need more investment. I think this is another way of more money to flow into the system, both for the traditional tech startups, but also for even smaller scale artisans or people in the fashion or agribusiness for them to raise investments. So really eager to see what happens there. But we're now going to move away from policy and look at money matters.
Also, I know Davida has spoken about the AI side, and right now AI is also really moving the show. In Ghana, we are also working on a national AI strategy, and it's important that even before AI. Even before AI fully grabs the space, we have a direction on how um, we want to you know leverage on the technology to build the economy. And so GIZ Ghana has actually been supporting the Ministry of Communication on this aspect, and we are hoping to have this strategy passed. So hopefully by the end of the year, we should have a strategy that guides the AI sector in Ghana.
Very nice. I know like, last year you had the AI mapping done, fair forward. So we're glad to be able to help visualize the mapping for GIZ. But yeah, I think an AI strategy for Ghana will be very important. I mean, I think AI, as we all know, is a game changer. I'm quite sure we're all using AI in what we're doing. And if not, we will be very soon. Coming to you, Kojo, I mean, you're in the fintech space. You mentioned there's still a lot to be doing. And once again, fintech dominated the investment landscape. With close to 45% of investments going to fintechs. I mean, what is it that makes it them so attractive and just really dominating the market of investments?
Yeah, so I think fintech is really foundational in itself. So the industry it solves like immediate high impact problems like financial inclusion, payment efficiency, and that also appeals to investors as a safer bet because you can see scale, you can see revenue directly. So those two things are what have driven this over the past few years. But more so is more about what fintech solves than fintech in itself. And if I double click on commerce, because that is really why we're all here, to trade, to sell, and to make sure we can grow businesses, right? The reason the biggest thing is for example on this continent we have 17% of the world's population, only 2% of the world's digital commerce, right? So there's a big gap that exists already, and this is despite all of the progress that has been made in the last 3 4 5 6 years. We're still way behind in terms of how much commerce is done digitally. Now that means that all of our commerce is really done in person or in cash or by physically going to places. And so we'll continue to see investment in fintech because it kind of bridges that gap and that opens up more industries. So, for example, on the broader financial services side, when there are more advancements in the payments industry and the fintech industry, we'll see people build on top of that to build investment companies. You see, traditional investment companies, as we're seeing now, are going digital. Everybody's coming up with an app, with a wealth management solution. Insurance is going digital. The insurance penetration has been super low for the longest time. Now we're seeing it uptick. Same for investment market penetration, which was like, I think, less than 2% in 2015. Now there's an uptick there. And across others, we're seeing pension solutions, we're seeing lending, which is a critical part of both consumer and SME, and SME, right? So these are the reasons why we may continue to see fintech dominate the investment inflows.
So, I mean, just like for future founders, would you just say like if you're looking to start an idea today, consider fintech because you're still 50% of the investment?
I wouldn't say so explicitly because that will be so you taking the answers to the quiz before you're looking for a problem, right? It's more about if you have a problem in fintech and you think you can build there, yes, your likelihood of getting funded is higher. But if you look at the numbers and say almost 50% of funding is in fintech, so I'm going to try and find a fintech problem. That's where we fall into what people say fintech is saturated because you're just making a duplicate. You're probably going to make a duplicate of already something is building. There's X payment company and there's 15 of them. You being the 16th one is nothing new. Yeah.
Okay. Isidore, if I can bring you into this conversation as well, you have raised funds for multiple businesses and are also an investor now yourself. What's been quite surprising this year is what we know as venture debt. What's your thought on that, on venture debt and it being such a novel means of funding?
Yeah, sure. I want to speak. Thanks for the question. I want to speak briefly about fintech again being being the primary driver of VC investment on the continent, and not just on the continent, but also in other part of the world. And that's rightly so, because the industry is very huge, like everything. So finance is a lifestyle, right? So there's no day goes by without someone doing something financial. Like you're doing every move of your life is financial. Every aspect of your life is financial. You're paying for healthcare, you're paying for school fees, you're transferring money to the next, to the vendor, to your parent. And so it's a very huge industry with unsolved problems. So efficiency, reliability, building for specific use cases. So I think so. The industry is very huge. So that's really one reason why fintech could be attracting the bulk of the investment. The other thing is that so if you look at the other industries very well. If you look at insurance, for example, even if you look at agri-tech or other industries, you see that there's some fintech embedded in these industries. So solving for these other industries is also expanding the market for fintech. So I think it's a very huge market. I think the frustration for those of us not in the space is that every fintech company we hear of is just solving for payment, right? So that's really for us why I always wonder why payment. Why can't we solve for other use cases beyond payment, right? So that's just my thought briefly on fintech and why it attracts the bulk of the funding over. But on venture debt, so let's just really talk briefly about what venture debt is, right? So there's already debt. Traditional businesses are often funded at some point by debt, right? Debt provided by traditional lenders like banks. But what is happening, what has been happening really over the past 5 years is that so there's a new form of capital that is risk tolerant, that is willing to fund startups, but not deploy this capital in the typical VC way or VC fashion. So they are not deploying this capital as equity, but to offer this capital to startups with the expectation that at some point the startups would pay back. And so there are some core differences between venture debt and traditional debt that you'd get from a bank. So venture debt, I think it's simpler, straightforward. You don't have to bring your grandmother's birth set that traditional lenders would ask for. Like, it's really straightforward, and it's also more flexible for startups. It's you can always negotiate the terms at some point if the market change or things change. So there's some good and some most venture debts don't also require securities or setting guarantee collateral, which is unlike for traditional debt. So my view generally is that we have so much liquidity so if you look at all the funding that is invested into startups, much of this comes from outside. I mean, I'm not sure how Kwejo mobilizes, where his LPs are, if he's investing off his balance sheet, but he's in the space. He would tell you that it's really difficult to get people locally to invest traditionally in startups, right? So you have debt. And a lot of people with the capital in Ghana, in this part of the continent, understands debt. So, is there a way, for example, we can work with some of these capital providers, so high net worth individuals and other players in the market, to structure some debt instrument for them, so that this instrument can be used to fund startups? So there's that. But venture debt is not for any startup. That's the other point, right? Because for most startups, you would operate for a long time without significant revenue or with no revenue at all. And so venture debt is also suitable for certain industries, from my experience. So agri-tech, for example, is one, because right from the onset, you can make money. Healthcare is another. So some asset exposed or asset-driven sectors can be very, very good for venture debt. Even in some cases, this asset can be used as securities, for debt. So I think that for us to make up for the shortfall in liquidity from the local market, so we need those of us in the space must push for more venture debt, because I think that these people locally understand this. They prefer this. They understand that I give you X and you pay me back X, with Y interest. They understand that better than saying, look, I'm going to give you money and I don't know what's going to happen, whether after 5 years, after 10 years, I don't know when I'm going to get the money back. They don't understand that. It doesn't make sense to them. So I think we need to push more for that, particularly for industries like healthcare, for logistics, for agriculture, because these industries inherently, I think, are less risky compared to other industries. They have more demand, compared to, they are more organic demand, right, for solutions that have been provided by startups. So this is really my view generally. So get more players in the ecosystem to push for venture debt, as a mix of the capital allocation to startups. Work with local capital providers, so particularly high net worth individuals, to sell some of these debt instrument to them, and then target sectors like agriculture, healthcare, logistics, and so on. For this type of instrument.
No, thank you very much. It was quite interesting to see Kojo just nodding along to almost everything you're saying. So I see that the two are very aligned, and yes, I think it's very true. But as you mentioned, we have a shortfall of capital in the country, and most investors are more used to, T-bills and debt instruments, and if anything, then it's an asset like real estate. So I think if we need to start getting more investors into the scene, letting them start with things they're used to is not a bad idea, because we do need more money for our startups to thrive. We just showing from the report, you can see the flow of investments over the year. And although we did have a 95 increase kind of as of 2023 last year, we're still behind our 2022 of $209 million invested. So I'm kind of hoping we get there this year. Before asking you all about what you think we might hit this year, what sectors might be hottest, there was one figure that was very disturbing in our research, and that was the female founding. Females got less than 1% of the funding this year, 2024. And how do we solve this issue? Because we have a lot of great females. We just celebrated Women's Day just last weekend, and still Women's Month and Women's Week. So happy Women's Month to all the ladies in the call, and we need to accelerate action. But it's a question for everyone. How do we change this number to be a lot more favorable going forward? I'll let anyone jump in. Is it policy? Is it legally mandated?
I'd love for the females to go first if they have perspective.
I was going to say that. No, but I think that we're making some progress, except that the progress is too slow. It's shamefully slow, and quite frankly, women are better at businesses than men, and we have to just admit it. We are very good at taking risks, and sometimes the wrong risks. But I think that women are better capital, are efficient capital managers than men. And so it's a shame that for some reason, I'm not sure what the issues are, so I can't speak to the matter, right? But I see that if you look at the numbers, you would realize that there's been some progress. And this is not just Ghana, right? This is really not just Africa. It's throughout the world. Females, particularly in startups, uh, receive less of the funding. But it'd really be good to understand how Doreen and Davina are thinking about the issue.
Yeah, I think we'll lean more towards two directions. Obviously, I'll start off on the policy direction. Um, we need to be intentional about making policies that also factor in that of women as well. So, for example, I was going to talk earlier about the Ghana Startup and Innovation Bill. And as part of that process, there is certain incentives that are being proposed to be able to push a little bit more funding towards women-led funders. So that's on the one end. How can we be intentional about creating policies that will create that foundational grounds for women-led businesses? And then my second point will be on also again talking about intentionality, ways that we can give women the platform. And I'm saying this because I'm also quite in the event space of a sort. And what we do usually, we see a lot of events around, and it's more common to see the men's faces on billboards, on flyers, etc., as compared to being intentional about having a balance between the genders. And to be honest, exposure is one thing that can create the opportunity for women-led businesses. And I'm going to give an example about last 2 years. When we organized the Ghana Digital and Innovation Week, we brought in one very prominent female-led founder that is making so much strides now. That's Wahoo Mobility. I think Isaac was there for that particular program. And we were very much surprised how much people were driven by the impact of their work. People were getting to hear about the amazing work that she was doing. And Valerie did so great with her presentation. She's going places now, So sometimes it's also about being intentional about creating that platform and inviting women onto that platform. Let's say bye-bye to the days where we have events filled with just men panelists, events filled with just men speakers, and let's be very intentional about bringing women more into the conversations. And let me use the opportunity to say a very big congrats to the Innovation Journal for ensuring the balance, at least for this particular session. So this will be my two add-ons to the conversation or the topic.
Okay, so I think I will jump on now. I think what should be done, what needs to be changed, is the fact that, as she said, women need to be showcased more. When she brought up Wahoo, I laughed because just a week ago, I was explaining to someone how Ghana has a company that is essentially manufacturing EV motorcycles in the country. And they were asking, who is that? So, but if I mention Paystack, for example, I mention ZPay, Fido, everybody knows them. But then when it comes to the female-led companies, the exposure is pretty low. They're not put at the forefront. We understand that, well, men are more risk takers and women are a bit subtle. They try to put all the organization and administrative works together before we come forward. And the men would come with their disorganized papers and are ready to talk you through it. But we believe that women should have more exposure, and this might sound biased, but there should be more women-focused investments, more women-focused funds to help push the women forward. So that's my take on this.
Do you want to come in, Kojo?
No, I think the panelists have really touched on almost everything. It has to be intentional. It's not going to come out of nowhere. So it's going to be a mix of intentionality in terms of gender balance and the types of companies you invest in, and And also storytelling, like you said, the story of Wahoo Mobility is what going to inspire other women to start companies. Because when you listen to all these male entrepreneurs on YouTube or you go to panels, they always talk about somebody who they looked up to, and it's always a man, right? So the more we're able to highlight the women who are building stuff, it's going to inspire the next generation to also chase their dreams. Yeah.
No, thank you. I can tell you here on good authority that the Ghana Innovation Journal is going to do something in this space to make sure we highlight women and do our part on the media side to promote this. Maybe the last question around investments. I mean, over here we're showing from the report, you can see the top sector year on year. 2021, it was healthcare, then fintech, then agriculture, and then fintech again. So fintech tends to dominate. Agriculture tends to do very well as well. But then you have a flux of whether it's health or energy or logistics being among the top five. What do you think are your bets for 2025? Would it be fintech again? What do you think the biggest raise is going to be? I think the largest raise we've seen in Ghana so far is, I think, 35 million, either in Dash or in M-Pharma. Last year it was 30 million to Fido. Do you think we'll cross the 35 million, hit the 40 million ticket size in 2025? If you guys have the crystal ball that we're all looking for, what are your bets on 2025? This time we'll start with the men.
So that should be Kojo then.
No worries, no worries. I can go first. So yeah, I'm not big on the number in terms of raised X dollar in millions. That's not something I typically take notice of. I mean, it's great, but if you were to ask me which sector, so there's two things. Which sector do I think would raise the most? Which sector would I want to raise the most? So the one that I think, because if I'm just to place a bet and be right, it will be fintech. And if it's a double click, it will be cross-border payments and or SME financing. Because I think those two things are the biggest needs we have right now in terms of where our economy is. Small businesses are struggling, they need finance, and anybody who cracks that across any vertical can help spur some growth. And cross-border payments are pretty much where the world is right now. But where do I want to see funding go is healthcare, right? So and so shout out to Isidore actually for building in that space, but I think it's super fundamental. All right. After I want to start a business, I want to get paid. The next thing is I need to be healthy to actually exist, right? But the healthcare gaps are just too big for where we are in terms of 2025. And some of these can be solved with just the right founders, the right companies raising money. They can actually close a lot of gaps. We've seen the impact some of the health tech companies that started in the last decade have had. And I think if we have 5, 4, 6 or more of those, there'll be super big progress. So that's where I want funding to go this year.
No, thank you.
Yeah, so thanks, Kojo, for being kind to me and for to be kind to our sector. So, I mean, we're seeing very scary stuff in healthcare. I mean, I didn't know a lot of these things until I got into the space. Last year, we came up with some findings. So we assessed over 80,000 people. Out of 80,000 people, 40,000 had undiagnosed or undetected chronic conditions like high blood pressure or diabetes. And some of them eventually result in strokes or in other complications that would further then lead to fatalities. And so it's very unfortunate that we're not investing significantly in healthcare, particularly primary care, because primary care is about 70% of healthcare, right? Primary care is the first point of contact that any individual will have with the healthcare system. And so that's your neighborhood clinic, your neighborhood pharmacy, but we're not investing significantly in that. If you look at if you take our population, we're about 35 million people with only 11,000 healthcare facilities. 80% of these is government owned, operated, or built. If you take diagnostics, for example, which forms the basis of any healthcare system, there are only 256 diagnostics centers across the country for 35 million people. So we have significant gaps to fill, gaps in terms of accessibility, gaps in terms of quality, that we need to invest in. And the funny thing is that, you see, there's the part about productivity. You see, I talk to a lot of SME owners, a lot of business owners, not just SME owners, and they complain all the time that some of our people are not as productive as we would like them to be. And sometimes, and so someone actually did the research. They found out that people are not as healthy as they thought. They did the screenings, right? Imagine someone having a renal condition, okay, that requires them to visit the washroom every hour. So every time they have to visit the washroom to use, to pee, they spend about 10 or 20 minutes. If they are working 8 hours a day, they're spending 20 minutes per hour on washroom. So that's 20 minutes times 8. Imagine, then multiply this times 5, and then times 5 days of the week, and then times 4 in the month, and then times 12. Right. This would undoubtedly have impact on the bottom line. Right. And we're not seeing this. And so we need to invest significantly in healthcare. The problem with healthcare is that we know the problem. It's just hard. We need to build more infrastructure. We need to build more of the brick and mortar, because anywhere in the world, 95% of any healthcare interaction, even in the US or in Europe, where healthcare systems are very well advanced, where the digital economy is very well advanced, 95% of healthcare interaction between the patient and the provider happens in person. For whatever reason, it happens in person, 95%, right? And so what it means is that we need to build more digital and more physical infrastructure. And beyond that, we also need to make the service delivery very, very personalized for the patient. We need to elevate the quality of the service, right? So that we can earn the trust of patients back. And so we're not doing that. And usually some of us, when we go into the sector, we are just building the marketplace to do this, to do that, and not solve these big problems. And so we have not been able to make the real impact that needs to be seen for investment, to go into this sector. So that's why players like M-Pharma, who are solving for the brick and mortar, they've managed to exist. So for the last 10 years or more than 10 years, the business model they chose was very unsexy. Many investors decided to pass on them, but they built for a problem that existed. And so over time, they managed to survive all the shocks that happened, and then eventually build confidence in their business and managed to attract all the funding that they did attract. So we need to build more for healthcare. We need investment for healthcare. The other thing I see all the time is that people think that they have to be sick before they engage the healthcare system. So there's also now, and so particularly in the US, in Europe, or in advanced healthcare systems, you have proactive care as well. So you don't have to actually fall sick before you engage with the healthcare system. So we have wearables, we have smart applications that are monitoring, that are remotely monitoring your health, your health vitals, and giving you personalized insights or consultations based on what the data the application is collecting. The data is collecting. The application is collecting from you. And so, healthcare really. There's a lot to be said about healthcare.
Yeah,
I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to leave it here, but yeah. Thanks, Coach J, again for the shout out.
And just by the way, and also thank you, Vivia, for also sponsoring this end of year report. They're one of the sponsors of the report. Ladies, what are your views on investments in 2025? What sector, what area are you hoping gets most investments? Are you, uh, is it legal tech for you? You see
Actually,
the
no.
legal tech? Okay.
So if I'm to bet who would get the most investment, is definitely going to be fintech, no doubt. But who I would want to get the most investment, it would be energy. Um, so we see a lot
Interesting.
of cars. We use the Accra roads a lot. You see a lot of cars being in deplorable states with their terrible emissions all the time. So if there's going to be more investment in the EV sector, well, we are in the age where we all know the climate, how the climate is going, and the need for there to be steps towards climate action. So if there's going to be a sector where I think should get more investments, it should be the energy sector, where there are companies being supported to focus more on building and manufacturing more EVs in Ghana. There's supposed to be talks to, because we know the ordinary Ghanaian man would not be interested in getting an EV car when he has to follow a certain branding. Then stealing this idea from Kenya, we have to move past the stage where the EVs are only the luxury cars, where you can go and charge at, let's say, A and C. But there are companies that start building motorcycles or cars that can actually be charged at home. And I'm stealing this idea because that's something that Room in Kenya does, where they have a motorcycle where you can charge your battery at home. They just come to inspect if your connections are done properly and ensure that it's done safely, and then you get your motorcycles with, I think, two batteries. So once while and one is charging, the other can be working. And there's even a cheat code, because there was a story of how a farmer needed the battery on his farm. So one battery was powering the motor, the other battery was powering his machines on the farm. So I think the sector I would want to bet on, which unfortunately wouldn't get, would be energy. Yeah.
No, thank you, thank you. And Doreen, are you throwing any bets in, or are you focusing just on policy? Are you going to join us with the betting?
Well, since the betting tax has been removed now, I think I would want to take a bet. So I think I also go with the fintech space, and especially because of certain initiatives such as the AFTA, which also means that there's going to be a lot of cross-border transactions happening. And so we're going to be seeing a lot more growth within that sector, which also means a lot more funding going into that sector as well. But beyond that, if I want to also see any other sector progress, that would be the agri sector, because agri, we all believe, is a backbone of the country. And we also have a lot of government initiatives that are currently supporting the agri sector, which means that a lot more support going towards these startups will further build the sector, and we'll see more investment funding going in there. So we have the likes of the 24-hour economy and the likes that we also have been implemented from the past years. And so for me, it's going to be the fintech sector, but beyond that, I would also bet on the agri sector.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. No, and thank you also all for your time. I just want to ask one last question. And please, audience, put any last comments in, because we're about to close. We've got over time, so really thank the panelists for being on. What is one mistake startups should avoid in 2025? You guys have all dealt with startups in many different ways, from investing, from being one, from legal work with them, policy, and being in the ecosystem. You've seen them do the same wrong thing over and over. What's your kind of message out for 2025 the one thing startups should not do. And then also, please, can you just let people know how they can get in touch with you? Whether it's through your venture or to follow your agency somewhere online. So please, that's kind of the closing for today. And since Doreen, you're on the screen, and we started with you, we'll start the ending with you.
Okay, Isaac.
Don't
The
hate
question
me too.
again. Sorry.
What's
The question.
the one thing startups should not do in 2025?
Okay. I think one thing startups should not do is not to remain uneducated. I think education is very important within, especially in this age. And of course, I know Isidore and the other panelists will talk about the other sectors, but I'm still going to stay on the policy side. There is so much that is happening in the space. We already know about the 24-hour economy. I spoke about that already. But one of the key sectors that the government is looking at is the digital startup sector and also the BPO sector. And there are so many incentives that they're going to put in place for businesses that are operating in this sector. And so the earlier you know this, the better you can position yourself well enough to be able to tap into this opportunity. Even beyond that, there are several other things that are in the space that you can take advantage of. But let me also use this opportunity to give a shout out to one of the projects that we are currently implementing. It's an entrepreneurship policy chatbot. And so this is going to be an AI-powered platform that will give entrepreneurs access to policies that they probably want to know anything about. So as compared to initially where you have to, first of all, look for a particular policy document, flip through several pages of these bulky documents and get information that you need, we are streamlining this for you. Think of it as a ChatGPT version of Ghanaian policies that we have. You can simply go on there, ask any question if you want to know something about, fundraising or anything about registering your business, or even who you need to approach in any of the activities that you want to do. We are currently working on that. We're launching that later in August this year. So please be on the lookout for the entrepreneurship policy chatbot to make access to policy documents easy. If you want to reach out to me, the same name on all platforms, but I think I'm most active on LinkedIn. So please connect and let's engage more. And especially if you want to know more or speak more to me about the regulation or the policy sector, I'll be happy to engage more with everyone here on the call. But thanks again for having me today, Isaac.
Thank you for joining, and we're looking forward to having you again soon in the future. I will go then with Isidore next. Briefly, what's one thing startups should not do 2025, and where and how can people engage with you and with vehicle?
Yeah, so I'm not sure it's limited to 2025. So I have like three things to say. So the first is that we should define what startups should be for Africa, right? Because a lot of times when I talk to some operators, investors, and stakeholders, we're trying to replicate what's been done elsewhere. Like we're trying to replicate Silicon Valley, Europe, the US, and that's a very, very terrible idea. And so as stakeholders in the space, start from startups to policymakers to investors to operators, we need to understand the dynamics of our markets and then build our ecosystems around that or for that, right? So that's the first thing. It's really important. I see a lot of business models, see a lot of startup ideas that have no bearing whatsoever on what the realities on the ground are in Africa, and yeah, they get funding as well from investors because these investors are Americans, they're Europeans, and and after some time they just close shop. So it is important for us, and so as a founder, don't ever fall in the trap of building for the bars because everybody is talking about AI. You should also go and build an AI company, right, with no proper business model inside. So that's really the first thing. The second thing I think is really about the ecosystem. I think we have to collaborate more. We're building too much in isolation, and so I'm not sure. I mean, that's really for all of us. So one of the things I've seen about other ecosystems is that those that are really doing well, the likes of Nigeria, Egypt, Nairobi, they actually work together, and they speak they speak one voice, right? But here it's a little bit difficult to collaborate with other players. Everyone is busy. I'm not sure what everyone is really busy. But I go to play. I'm in transit, and I'm meeting the CEO of a $50 million company. By just texting them, hey, I'm in your country, I'm in transit, can I meet you? Hey, let's. But trying to have a meeting with, and so we need to actually work together. We need to speak one voice. So that's really the only way we can get more publicity for the ecosystem. The only way we can get more resources for the ecosystem. The only way we can prove that we are viable as an ecosystem. Yeah, I think the last will be to continue to encourage folks like you, Isaac and Doreen, creating the platforms for players like us to come together and talk about what we're doing. Really keep doing that, and we're very, very glad to have supported the enterprise. We hope to do more with you in the future. So to reach out to me, the only place would be LinkedIn. I'm not sure. I think I'm on other platforms, but I don't check them really. So LinkedIn would be the place. You can go to any Ravia clinics as well. So we have we're opening 2 clinics in Laboni as we speak, and 1 in East Legon, and we'll be offering free vitals trainings. And we're happy. You should come to any of the clinics. So Laboni, East Legon, Jolu. You should come. Just mention my name, and then you're happy. We'll be happy to, or they'll be happy to offer you some free services. Yeah.
Isaac, sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. What should startups not do? And how can people reach out to you? And maybe also quickly, what is Legal Find all about?
Okay. Let me start with what startups should not do. I have 3 points basically. The first point as well is going to be pretty obvious because of the field I am in, is to not ignore the regulations in the country, and as far as practicable, speak to a lawyer before you take any actions. Incorporating the company, setting up all your plans, actions, agreements, speak to a lawyer. They know what they are doing. And in as much as people believe they have street sense, the lawyers actually know the professional ways to go about certain deeds. So speak to a lawyer and do not ignore your regulation. The second aspect would be not to chase funding without an actual plan. And by that, most people we see have a vague idea and start chasing funding. And one thing that is worse than not getting funding is a destroyed reputation internationally. So if you constantly get the funding, if you get the plan, initially you get the funding. But if you get the funding and you do not put it to actual use, or you do not actually set up something for your investors to see where their money is going, where their funds are going, your reputation would go down the drain, and that's worse than actually not getting the funding. So the second thing I would say is not to chase funding without an actual plan. The third thing is to for startups not to ignore the importance of collaboration. I think Isidore already touched on it, and it's actually true. When you go outside, you speak to Nigerians, you speak to people in Nairobi, they are very open to talk about their ideas. They're talking about how we can collaborate. We're setting meetings on how they can scale to Ghana and do more, well, for their people, for Ghana, for Africa as a whole. You come to Ghana and you have to set meetings way ahead, and you have to try to be nice to people, and sometimes people look down on you thinking you're a small girl and all that. So I think one thing we should do for startups is not to ignore the importance of collaboration. um the second part where you can connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn, and I think my name is distinct enough. It's Davidina Datson. Everywhere actually. So any social media I am on, it would definitely be Davidina over there. For what Legal Find we do. So Legal Find is a smart ed tech. We Let me start with the challenge we seek to address. So we've noticed that, well, legal documents in Ghana are difficult to find. Our digitization in that sector is not exactly up there. We have a couple of people digitizing cases and statutes, but when it comes to the broader picture, the digitization in that sector is very untouched. It's you, as a lawyer trying to deal with clients' work, I'd have to constantly move to the state agencies. If you need books, we find, unfortunately, the one of the thriving businesses in universities is the guys in the area printing and making photocopies of textbooks, which is, well, a copyright infringement of the authors of the books. So one thing we aim to do is to collaborate with, well, the state agencies, with the authors of books, with people in the legal space essentially. So we are not just going to cover or digitize cases and statutes. We're going to try to add court notices, the notices from the state agencies, documents from state agencies. So if you want to conduct a search instead of driving, I keep saying this over and over again that, well, I'm fortunate I'm in Accra, but imagine somebody coming from the north taking a 13-hour journey just to come to Lands Commission in Accra or ORC for a piece of paper. So aside the fact that we're still using papers all the time, the amount of fuel emissions that we have to deal with just to get our work done. So our main focus is to deal with that. We're adding the books. I don't know if I've already mentioned, we're adding anything paperwork in the legal sector. So articles is essentially everything. um, One thing that motivated us last year was the fact that, well, we want to align with the Sustainable Development Goals, and, well, educating students with the law students would be as addressing SDG 4, the bringing in quality education, as addressing the climate aspect, which is reducing the amount of journeys lawyers would have to take to get their documents done. That would be dealing with SDG 13, that's climate action. And, well, for us in the legal space, that will be us also dealing with the peace, justice, strong institutions, that's SDG 16. And the fact that we are women at the front, well, we are dealing with gender equality in the end, that's SDG 5. So in as much as we are solving issues within our legal space, we're also aligning ourselves with the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's one thing, like, that excites me a lot. So yes, that's what Legal Find is doing now.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Kojo, especially from Moonshot Venture Partner side, I'm sure you get a lot of applications. What's one thing you're hoping not to see in your applications and from founders? And then, yeah, how can people get in touch with you and also with MVP?
Yeah, what I want to see more from founders, or maybe less from founders, is I'll put it this way: as a early stage founder, focus on your customers and your products. That's probably the single most important thing. And it sounds very simple and sounds like that's what you're already doing. But too many times I see people focusing on too many other things. Like you have to be obsessed with your customer. You have to talk to your customer pretty much, or your customers as much as you can. And even if you think you talk to them more regularly, you still need to talk to them more because you're building a product and you might think I have industry experience. So I know what the customer wants. You spend time in your room, building. You come back, the industry has moved, or you've missed the mark on exactly what. And there's a cost to that, the cost of time, cost of money, and that's the number one thing that kills startups for the most part. I have made that mistake in the past, and I still see a lot of people doing the same thing in their rooms, head down building because they are convinced they know, and they'll come out and now they're looking for customers. In that time, somebody else has has spoken to the customer and built something to solve the problem. So yeah, that's my submission.
Thank you. And where can people find out more about you and also Moonshot Venture Partners?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Who are you
Type
looking for investees?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can follow Moonshots also on Instagram, LinkedIn. Our social media is mvp.africa. Our emails are actually public. Moonshot@mvp.africa. You can shoot us an email and we can get conversations going.
Awesome. Once again, for everybody, thank you so much. It's been such a fruitful discussion. I love all the chats also coming from all the people online. I'm just going to put some last comments. Isidore, you got a lot of fans. African Voice, African Vision, African Vision. This is the EdTech Alliance founder. So if you're building an EdTech as legal fine as an EdTech, I hope you're in the community. We talk about collaborating. I'd love to see how we can collaborate more with all of you going forward with the Ghana Innovation Journal. We are looking to do a lot of things. We capture what's happening in the ecosystem. So of course, Wahoo's here. We like to work with the ecosystem partners, mostly in Ghana. We're now doing things in Nigeria and further afield as well. And we're looking forward to driving more reports and information and insights to you. And as I mentioned, we're definitely going to see how to bring in more female voices. So thank you for the ladies for highlighting that. And we'll do our part as Ghana Innovation Journal to make that a reality. Thank you all for your time. Everyone listening, thank you all for the speakers for your time, and looking forward to being in touch. Once again, the report is out. Make sure you go download it if you haven't already, and let us know what you think. And see you in the near future. Bye for now.